The night has softened, and perhaps you are looking for something gentler, slower, so that your mind can gradually let go. Welcome to Stories for Sleep, a place where stories are not only meant to be heard, but to be felt, to unwind, and to help you drift into sleep in the most natural way. Tonight, we will explore together a very special world, the fascinating truths about elephants, creatures immense in size, yet living with a rhythm that is slow, deep, and full of emotion. Through the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung, this is not just a story about animals, but a journey into a very quiet place within yourself, where peace has always existed. If you find that stories like this help you relax and sleep more deeply, you may gently subscribe to Stories for Sleep to accompany me on the nights ahead. The night has arrived, and perhaps you are here after a long day when your mind is still quietly running through thoughts that have not yet come to rest. You may have tried to close your eyes, but inside, everything is still moving. Small worries, fleeting memories, unfinished things, all like gentle waves, yet unceasing, making it difficult for you to truly rest. And in this moment, perhaps what you need is not to force yourself to sleep, but a place where your mind can slow down, a place quieter, deeper, more ancient. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And sometimes, to fall asleep, we do not need to escape our thoughts. We only need to gently guide them into another space. Tonight, I will take you to such a world of enormous beings, yet moving almost without sound. A world where everything unfolds slowly, with order and with a depth that modern humans rarely feel anymore. The world of elephants. But this is not only about interesting facts. This is a journey where you will discover their remarkable memory, the way they sense the world through the vibrations of the earth, the way they love, remember, and even grieve. And as you listen, it is not only about them, it is about you. Because somewhere, within the slow rhythm of elephants, there is a very deep part of you that is also seeking to return to stillness, to return to a primal sense of safety, to return to sleep. And now, take a very gentle breath, relax your body, and join me in stepping into this slow world. Entering the slow world. Perhaps, before we truly enter the world of elephants, something needs to happen first. Not outside, but within you. A very subtle shift, from fast to slow, from tense to loose, from noise to quiet. Because the rhythm you have just left may still be there, in your uneven breath, in thoughts not yet finished, in the feeling that your mind is still running, even though your body has stopped. And that is completely natural. We live in a world where everything is designed to be faster, faster to respond, faster to decide, faster so as not to fall behind. But rarely are we taught how to slow down. Not slow because of exhaustion, but slow to return. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." And to look inward, we cannot continue moving at the same speed. We need to pause for a moment. And right here, the world of elephants begins to open. Not loud, not hurried, not asking you to understand immediately, simply existing. Imagine a vast land, soft light, warm air, and in the distance, a herd of elephants moving, slowly, gently, almost without sound, even though their bodies are large enough to seem capable of shaking the ground. But no, they walk as if they know exactly the rhythm of this world. Not faster, not slower, just right. If you listen closely, you will notice that this space is not only quiet, but carries a very particular feeling, a feeling of safety. Nothing is demanding that you respond immediately. Nothing needs to be solved. Nothing needs to be achieved. You do not need to do anything, only to be here. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And perhaps, in this slow world, you do not need to become anyone else. You only need to return. Return to your own breath. Return to the feeling of your body touching the ground. Return to the stillness that has always been there, but is sometimes covered by too much noise. Elephants do not hurry. They do not live in a timeline divided into dense schedules. They live in a different rhythm, an older rhythm, deeper, slower. And the strange thing is, your body recognizes this, even before you think. A very deep part within you begins to adjust. Your breath slows a little. Your shoulders soften a little. Your heartbeat quiets, like when you hear a very slow piece of music, and without trying, your body follows. The world of elephants is like that. It does not force you to relax. It simply is there and invites you to enter. If you continue with this image, you may see the herd stopping. Some stand still. Some gently touch one another with their trunks. No words, but a very clear connection, a presence, an awareness that they are not alone. And perhaps you begin to feel that too. That in this moment, you do not need to carry everything. You do not need to hold on to your thoughts. You do not need to keep analyzing. You can put them down, little by little, like a leaf falling, not hurried, not resisting, simply letting go. Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." And perhaps, even within the chaos of a long day, there is a deeper order waiting for you to touch, an order of stillness, of breath, of not needing to do anything. The world of elephants is not a place for you to learn something. It is a place for you to remember what it feels like when nothing is rushed, to remember what it feels like when you are not pulled by thoughts, to remember safety. And as that feeling begins to spread, very gently, very slowly, you may realize that sleep is not something you have to achieve. It comes, like darkness when the sun sets, like your body knowing when it needs to rest. You do not need to force it, only not resist. And now, as you are here, in this slow space, perhaps you are ready, not to hear more information, but to experience, to go deeper into the world of elephants, to explore not only how they live, but how they feel. And in that journey, perhaps, you will gradually discover something very familiar, not outside, but within you, a part that has always been there, slow, quiet, and waiting for you to return. And perhaps, if you remain in this space just a little longer, you will begin to notice something very subtle, that slowing down is not losing anything. It is recovering something that has been forgotten. In the modern world, we often believe that value lies in moving forward, faster, more, farther. But your body, your mind, are not designed to remain in that state forever. In a very deep place, you belong to a different rhythm. A rhythm like the way elephants walk. No need to rush, no need to prove, no need to arrive quickly, only to walk. And as you allow yourself to remain in this rhythm, you may begin to notice small details more clearly. The breath coming in, slightly cooler. The breath going out, slightly warmer. The body, heavier, as if gently supported. Thoughts, no longer as dense as before, beginning to thin out, like clouds drifting slowly across the sky. You do not need to push them away. Do not need to control them. Only let them pass, like the way a herd of elephants moves across a vast land, leaving no disturbance, only the faintest trace, before disappearing into space. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "Peace comes when you are not trying to control what is not yours." And perhaps sleep is the same. It does not come when you try to control it. It comes when you stop trying, when you allow yourself to let go. Let go of what is unfinished. Let go of what is not understood. Let go even of the need to fall asleep right away. And strangely, in that very moment, sleep begins to come closer, not loudly, not suddenly, but like a very gentle wave, slowly, enveloping. If you remain here a little longer, you may feel the space around you becoming wider, quieter, deeper, no longer clearly defined, only a feeling of drifting, a feeling of being held, a feeling of safety. And in that space, you do not need to do anything anymore. No need to follow the story. No need to remember information. Only listen, feel, and gradually drift along, like a leaf, floating on still water, not knowing where it will go, but not needing to know, because the current already knows, and you can trust that too. Trust that your body knows how to rest. Trust that your mind knows how to settle. Trust that sleep is coming, very gently, very slowly, like the footsteps of elephants in the quiet night. And perhaps, right now, you have already begun to leave behind the noisy world, to step deeper into another world, a world slow, ancient, and peaceful, gentle giants. And as you begin to settle into that slow rhythm, as your breath is no longer hurried, as your mind no longer tries to hold on to everything, the world of elephants gradually becomes clearer, no longer a distant image, but a presence. You may imagine, in that quiet space, from afar, a very slow movement emerging, not loud, not rushed, simply a herd of elephants approaching. They are the largest land animals on Earth, massive bodies, weighing several tons, each step seeming as though it could shake the ground. And yet, the remarkable thing is, they do not. They walk so gently that they make almost no sound, as if their weight is not a burden, but a natural part of their existence. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." And perhaps elephants in their own way carry within them a deep kind of knowing about themselves. They do not resist their size. They do not try to become smaller. They do not try to become more intimidating. They simply are. And that in itself creates a very particular kind of peace. There are three main branches in their world. African elephants, living across vast savannas, where light stretches over warm, dry lands. Forest elephants, hidden within dense green spaces, where every sound becomes softer. And Asian elephants, with their calm presence, connected to forests and to humans over thousands of years. Each group, each landscape, holds its own rhythm. But all of them share something deeply similar: slowness, steadiness, presence. If you observe more closely, you may notice that each of their steps is never random. There is no rush, no excess. Every movement has purpose, yet carries no tension, as if they always know. There is no need to arrive faster. There is nothing chasing them. There is nothing to prove. And perhaps that is the greatest difference between them and us. We often move quickly, even when there is no need. We rush, even when no one is urging us. we carry a sense that if we do not move forward, we will fall behind. But in the world of elephants, that idea does not exist. There is only the present. Jung once said, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." And perhaps each step of an elephant carries that kind of meaning. No need for grandeur, no need for speed, only truth. If you continue listening, you may begin to notice that their silence is not emptiness. It is fullness, not the absence of sound, but no need for sound. They communicate, feel, and exist in a very different way, a way without pressure, a way without interruption, a way that allows everything to unfold naturally. And this begins to affect you very gently, very slowly. You may feel your body beginning to relearn this rhythm. No effort needed, only being there. Just as you do not need to learn how to breathe once you stop thinking about it. If you notice, you may realize something interesting. The largest creatures are also the gentlest in their movement, not because they are weak, but because they do not need to prove their strength. They do not need to impress. They do not need to display. They do not need to make their presence loud. They simply exist. And perhaps, somewhere deep within you, there is a part that longs for that too. A part that does not want to try so hard, does not want to carry so much, does not want to become something other than itself, only wants to be. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And in this slow world, you do not need to become anyone else. You only need to return. Return to the feeling of your body being here. Return to your breath. Return to the quiet that has always been within you, though sometimes hidden. The elephants continue walking, slow, steady, unhurried, and if you continue walking with them, you may realize there is no particular destination to reach. There is only the journey, a journey, not measured by distance, but by presence. And in that journey, you do not need to do anything more. No need to understand everything, no need to remember, only continue listening, continue relaxing, and allow this slow rhythm to guide you deeper into a quieter state where everything begins to feel lighter and sleep is no longer far away. As you continue walking with that image, as the herd of elephants moves quietly through the vast space, you may begin to notice something very subtle, that their gentleness does not come from their size, but from the way they exist. They do not carry tension. They do not carry urgency. They do not carry the need to arrive faster. And because of that, each step becomes soft, almost leaving no trace in the air. If you imagine more closely, you may see their feet touching the ground slowly, firmly, yet softly, as if they are listening to the earth before placing their weight upon it. A kind of respect, a kind of connection, not between a creature and its environment, but between two parts of the same system. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "We are not what happened to us, we are what we choose to become." And perhaps, elephants do not become gentle because they are small. They become gentle despite their strength. They are not defined by their power, but by how they use it. And that creates a very particular feeling when you observe them. A sense of ease, because you know that strength here is not meant to harm, but to sustain life. If you continue listening, you may notice that the space around the elephants seems to change, not because the environment has changed, but because your rhythm has. Everything feels slower, sounds softer, distance is wider, like when you enter a deep forest and naturally lower your voice. even though no one asks you to, because that space does not need noise. The world of elephants is the same. It does not demand. It does not push. It does not require a reaction. It simply is and allows you to be with it. If you notice, you may realize something else. When you are not being pushed, you begin to feel more. You feel the air. You feel your body. You feel the space between thoughts. And in that space, there is a very deep stillness. A stillness, not empty, but full. Jung once said, "Silence is the great revealer." And in the silence of elephants, many things are revealed, not through words, but through experience. You do not need to understand with the mind, only to feel. And as you remain in this space, just a little longer, you may notice your body has already changed. Your shoulders lighter, your jaw no longer tense, your eyes beginning to grow heavy, your breath deeper, all of it happening naturally, without effort. Just as elephants do not try to be gentle, they simply do not resist their own rhythm. And perhaps that is what you are remembering too. Not learning something new, but remembering how your body knows how to rest. Remembering how your mind knows how to let go. Remembering that you do not need to hold everything at once. You can put things down, little by little. And as you do that, very gently, very slowly, you may notice something more, that you are going deeper, not into the story, but into a state where nothing needs to be solved, nothing needs to be achieved, only presence. And in that presence, you are no longer outside observing the elephants. You are with them, in the same rhythm, in the same space, in the same stillness. And from there, very gently, very naturally, sleep begins to come closer, not rushed, not forced, simply arriving, like the night, slowly settling over the quiet footsteps of gentle giants. Elephant society, the intelligence of memory. And as you continue walking with the herd, as their slow rhythm becomes more familiar, as each step is no longer something distant but part of the space you are feeling, perhaps you begin to notice something deeper, that they do not only move together, they belong to one another, not a random group, but a family, a living structure, held together not by rules, but by memory. Within the herd, there is one presence you may sense, even without seeing directly, a calm, steady presence, not needing to assert itself, yet everything seems to revolve around it. It is the oldest female, the leader, not because she is the strongest, but because she remembers the most. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed." And perhaps the matriarch carries that calm within her, not a calm that was always there, but one formed through experience, through droughts, through long journeys in search of water, through dangers once faced. All of it does not disappear. It is kept in memory, and that memory becomes intelligence. If you listen deeply, you may realize that the way the herd moves is not random. They do not choose their path arbitrarily. They move in a direction, with a rhythm, with a logic that needs no explanation, because there is a memory guiding them. A memory not belonging to just one individual, but to the whole herd. The matriarch does not command, she simply moves, and the others follow, not because they are forced, but because they trust. Trust in what she knows, trust in what she remembers. Jung once said, "In each of us, There is another whom we do not know, and perhaps memory is like that. It exists within us, quietly, yet influences every decision we make. In elephants, this becomes clearer. Memory is not just the past. It is a tool for survival. It is a map not drawn, but lived. And as you remain in this space, you may feel your own mind softening, thoughts less dense, questions less urgent, only a slow current, a quiet, held by something larger. And in that quiet, you do not need to go anywhere else. You do not need to search for anything more. Only remain, listen, and allow your own memory, not of the past, but of the body, of rest, to gently guide you deeper into a more peaceful state, where everything softens and sleep begins to draw closer, like a natural continuation of this journey, the language of the earth. And as you remain within that slow current, as the memory of the elephant herd is no longer a distant idea, but has become part of the space you are feeling, perhaps something even more subtle begins to reveal itself. That not all connection needs to be seen. Not all communication needs to be heard with the ears. In the world of elephants, there is another kind of language. A language not on the surface, but deeper, beneath the ground. If you listen very carefully, you may sense a very gentle vibration, not a clear sound, not a call you can distinguish, but a wave spreading slowly through the earth. Elephants produce sounds at very low frequencies, so low that human ears cannot hear them, but the ground can, and their bodies can. They do not only hear with their ears, they hear through their feet. Every step, every movement is not just an action, but also part of communication. A signal being sent, a message without words. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And perhaps the language of elephants is like that. It does not turn outward. It is not loud. It moves inward, into the body, into sensation. If you imagine a herd of elephants separated by dozens of kilometers, yet still knowing one another, still sensing each other's presence, you may begin to understand that their world is not limited by distance, not limited by sound, but connected through vibration. A vibration traveling through the earth, through space, through what we cannot see. And what is interesting is, your body is familiar with this too, even if you do not realize it. You have felt a room that was tense, even when no one spoke. You have felt peace simply by being near someone, not through words, but through feeling. Jung once said feeling is telling you something, and perhaps, in the world of elephants, feeling is the primary language. No translation needed, no explanation needed, only to feel. If you remain with this image a little longer, you may see an elephant pause. It does not make a clear sound, but its body becomes very still, as if it is listening, not with its ears, but with its whole body. Its feet touch the ground, and there, a message is arriving from far away, very subtle, but clear enough for it. Another herd is moving. A water source has been found. A danger is approaching. All of it transmitted without words. And if you allow yourself, you may begin to listen in that way as well. Not to understand information, but to feel the vibration. You may feel your heartbeat, your breath, the sensation of your body resting where you lie. All of these are signals. Small vibrations, always present, yet often overlooked because they are too subtle, too delicate too slow compared to the outside world. But in the world of elephants, that is everything. Jung once wrote, "The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant." And perhaps, when you listen through the body, through feeling, you are touching that intuitive part. The part that does not need analysis, does not need logic, only knows. And as you remain in this state, you may realize that you no longer need to follow the story. You do not need to remember every detail. You do not need to understand everything. Only be there, listening, the way the earth listens, receiving the way the body receives. And in that receiving, there is no tension, no pressure, only openness. If you go a little deeper, you may feel the boundary between you and the surrounding space beginning to soften. You are no longer listening. You are within the vibration, a very gentle current, very deep, very slow. And within that current, everything becomes softer. Thoughts slow down. Sensations become gentler. The body grows heavier, as if being held. No effort needed, no control required, only allowing. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And perhaps, in this stillness, you do not need to seek light. You only need to remain with the quiet, with the subtle vibrations, with the feeling of being connected, not through words, but through presence. And when you stay long enough in that state, you may realize that sleep does not arrive as an interruption, but as a continuation, a very gentle transition from listening into drifting. And just like vibrations traveling through the earth, unseen, yet always present, sleep is the same. It does not need to be sought. You only need to be still enough to feel it. And then, very naturally, you will drift along as part of that current, deeper, quieter, and more gently into sleep. And as you continue to remain within that current of vibration, not trying to understand, not trying to grasp, simply feeling, you may begin to notice something very subtle, that the world is not only made of what we see or hear, but also of what we feel. Elephants do not need loud sounds to communicate, do not need clear words, do not need strong signals. They use very small vibrations that travel very far. And this carries a very particular gentleness, not intrusive, not forceful, simply spreading. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And if you listen more deeply, you may realize that the noise you have grown used to is not always what you truly need. Perhaps a part of you has grown tired of loud sounds, dense information, endless streams of thought. And now, in a space where everything is very soft, very slow, very subtle, your body begins to respond, not through thinking, but through relaxation. You may feel your shoulders drop a little more, your breath lengthen slightly, your heartbeat soften, very small shifts, yet enough to change your entire state. Just as a very gentle vibration can travel dozens of kilometers beneath the earth. If you remain with this feeling, you may realize that you no longer need to listen in the usual sense. You do not need to focus, do not need to concentrate, only open to the space, open to sensation, open to the quiet. Jung once wrote, "The deeper we go into the psyche, the more we find a common ground, and perhaps, as you go deeper into this state, you touch that common ground, a place where there is no clear separation between you and the world around you. You are no longer here, and the world there. Everything blends, like the vibrations of elephants, moving through the earth, without boundaries, only continuity. If you allow yourself to drift with that feeling, you may notice that thoughts are no longer central. They may still appear, but softer, more distant, like faint sounds far away, no longer pulling your attention. And in the space between those thoughts, there is a very deep stillness, a stillness that you do not need to hold, do not need to maintain. It is simply there, and you only need to be with it. If you notice, you may feel your body gradually becoming heavier, not heavy in discomfort, but held, supported, like the earth supporting each step of the elephants, without effort. You do not need to hold your body. You can let it rest completely. And as you do, very gently, very slowly, you may notice something clearly, that you do not need to control this process. You do not need to enter sleep. You only need to stop resisting. Just as you do not need to hear the vibrations of the earth, they are always there. You only need to be still enough to notice. Jung once said, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." And perhaps sleep does not come from control. It comes when you allow yourself to drift, like a current, like a gentle play between body and space. No goal, no pressure, only continuation. And within that continuation, you no longer need to follow the story. No need to hold images, no need to remember, only drift with the feeling. Very light, very deep, very slow, like vibrations moving through the earth, unseen, yet always present. And then, when you are no longer trying to hold on to anything, when everything softens, when your body fully relaxes, sleep will come. Not as an ending, but as a natural continuation, a gentle transition from feeling into drifting away. And you simply go along, intelligence and awareness. And as you continue drifting within those gentle vibrations of the earth, as this way of listening with the body becomes more natural, another doorway, deeper, begins to open. No longer just connection, but awareness that elephants do not only feel the world, they also know themselves. If you imagine an elephant standing before still water or a mirror, you may see a very special moment unfold. It does not react as if seeing another. It pauses, observes, touches gently, as if recognizing that the image is itself. This is not just an interesting behavior. It is a rare sign in the animal world, a sign of self-awareness. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And perhaps, to become oneself, one must first be able to recognize oneself, not through words, not through definitions, but through direct experience. If you stay with that image a little longer, you may feel a deep stillness in that moment of recognition. No rush, no strong reaction, only understanding. An understanding that needs no explanation, and that also exists within you. There are rare moments when you are no longer carried away by thought, no longer pulled by emotion, but simply know that you are here, know that you exist, nothing more needed. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And perhaps the ability to recognize yourself is a very gentle, very deep step in that journey. Not to control, but to see the miraculous body, As you remain in that very gentle state of awareness, when you are no longer trying to understand, but simply feeling, something else begins to softly emerge. Not thought, not memory, but the body. As if, after moving through the deeper layers of awareness, you return to what is closest. So close that sometimes you forget that it has always been there, your body. And in the same way, when you look at an elephant, you may first notice its immense size. But if you stay long enough, you begin to realize that its body is not only large, it is something miraculous. Imagine an elephant's trunk, a long, flexible structure capable of lifting objects weighing hundreds of kilograms, yet also able to pick up a single small leaf with the gentlest precision. More than 40,000 muscles working together. No noise, no strain, just coordination. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The body is the shadow of the soul." And perhaps within the body of an elephant, there is a deep harmony between inner and outer. No separation, no conflict, only a flow of movement, of sensation, of life. If you observe more closely, you will see that the trunk is not just a tool, it is feeling. It touches, it explores, it connects, just as your hands touch the world. But sometimes, you no longer feel that clearly, because you have become used to it, because you have been in a hurry, because you have stopped paying attention. And gradually, you begin to live in your head more than in your body. But here, in the world of elephants, the body is always being listened to. Every movement carries awareness. Every contact carries sensation. If you stay with this, you will see the elephant's skin, thick, yet very sensitive. Not a rigid armor, but a living surface that needs care. They cover themselves with mud, not because they are dirty, but because it protects. The mud keeps moisture, the mud shields, the mud soothes. A simple act, yet full of understanding. Jung once wrote, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." And perhaps every action of an elephant, no matter how small, carries a clear meaning. Nothing excessive, nothing unconscious, only what is appropriate. If you listen more deeply, you will realize that their bodies are not separate from their environment. They do not resist nature, they merge with it. Their ears are large, not only for hearing, but to regulate, release heat, maintain balance. A gentle movement of the ears is also the body adjusting itself. No thinking required, no decision needed, just knowing. And perhaps your body is the same. It knows when to rest, knows when to breathe more deeply, knows when to let go. But sometimes you no longer listen to it. You listen to thoughts, to pressure, to what you must do, and gradually you forget the language of the body. But right now, as you are here, in this slow space, you can begin to return. No effort needed, just notice. You can feel your body lying there, its weight, its contact with the surface, the warmth or coolness, your breath moving in, moving out. All of it is happening without needing your control. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And perhaps returning to the body is also a way of making the unconscious conscious, not through thinking, but through feeling. If you go a little deeper, you may notice that your body is gradually relaxing, not all at once, but in parts. Your shoulders lighter, your jaw softer, your forehead no longer tense. Very small changes, yet enough to create a great difference. Just as a small movement of the trunk can completely change an elephant's action. No force needed, only rightness. And as you remain with your body, you may realize something clearly, that you do not need to do anything to relax. You only need to stop doing, stop holding, stop tightening, stop trying to control, and allow the body to do the rest. Just as the bodies of elephants always know how to adjust, how to balance, how to exist fully. If you stay with that feeling a little longer, you may notice the boundary between your body and the space around you beginning to soften. You no longer feel that you are lying on the surface, but as if you are being supported, being held. No need to hold yourself, no need to control, just release. And within that release, there is a very deep peace, a peace that does not come from thought, but from the body, an ancient peace, a natural peace, like the way elephants exist, in complete harmony with themselves. And when you remain long enough in that harmony, sleep will come, not as a goal, but as a result, a very gentle result of returning to yourself, to your body, to your breath, to the stillness, and you only need to follow, very slowly, very deeply, very softly, into sleep. And as you continue to stay with your body, not trying to change, not trying to control, simply feeling, you may begin to notice something very subtle, that your body is not against you. It is always supporting you, just as the body of an elephant always functions in deep harmony. No part works alone. No movement is meaningless. Everything is connected. If you look more closely, you may notice that the elephant's trunk is not only strong, but also deeply listening. It does not grip everything tightly. It does not hold for too long. It touches, then releases. It lifts, then lets go. A very natural flexibility. And perhaps this is what you are beginning to relearn. Not holding onto every thought, not clinging to every emotion, but allowing them to come and go. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And perhaps when you stop resisting, everything begins to soften. Thoughts lighter, emotions gentler, the body looser. If you stay in this feeling, you may notice that your skin begins to breathe, not in a visible way, but as a very subtle sensation, as if your body is no longer tightening to protect, but beginning to open, like elephants covering themselves in mud, not to hide, but to care. You too can begin to care for your body in the simplest way. Let it rest, let it do nothing, let it hold nothing. And as you do this, very gently, very slowly, you may notice that something deep within you begins to trust again. Trust that you are safe. Trust that nothing needs immediate reaction. Trust that you can let go. Jung once wrote, "Trust that which gives you meaning and accept it as your guide." And perhaps, in this moment, your body itself is your guide. Not thought, not plans, but feeling, the heaviness of your body, the warmth of the space, the gentle drifting, slow, soft. If you go deeper, you may find that you no longer need to feel clearly. Everything becomes softer, blurred, more distant, like the moment before sleep, when awareness is still there, but fading. A state in between, not fully awake, not yet asleep, just drifting. And in that state, you do not need to hold anything. No story, no images, no thoughts. Only let the body lead you. Just as an elephant's body knows how to move without thinking of each step, if you notice, your breath now is very light, almost imperceptible. Your heartbeat slower, the space quieter, and you quieter. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed how you are within it. Jung once said, "The soul always knows what to do to heal itself." And perhaps your body does too. It knows how to rest, how to restore, how to guide you into sleep. You do not need to teach it, only do not interfere. And then, when everything is slow enough, soft enough, quiet enough, sleep will come. Without announcement, without preparation, simply arriving, like a natural continuation of your return to the body. And you need do nothing more, only drift along the depth of emotional life. And as you remain in that deep relaxation of the body, as all tension begins to dissolve, as you no longer try to hold anything, another layer of feeling begins to open. No longer the body, no longer movement, but emotion. A very quiet space, yet not empty. A space with depth. If you continue with the elephants, you may notice that their presence does not only bring peace, it also carries a certain gravity, a depth, as if they have lived through much and still hold it somewhere deep within. Elephants do not just live, they feel. And what is remarkable is, they do not hide those feelings. If one member of the herd is lost, the others do not simply move on. They pause, they return, they touch the bones, gently, slowly, as if remembering. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness." And perhaps, in the world of elephants, that darkness is not avoided, it is embraced, quietly, without drama, simply present, care and kinship. And as the waves of emotion begin to settle, as sorrow is no longer a large wave, but only faint ripples, something else begins to appear. Not loss, but support. As if after moving through the darkness, you begin to realize that in the world of elephants, no individual is ever truly alone. Even in grief, they remain together. And from that, a deeper layer of life opens. Care. If you continue walking with the herd, you may see a very gentle scene. A young elephant, still small, not yet steady, moving among larger bodies. But what is remarkable is, it does not have only one mother. It has the whole herd. Other elephants, who did not give birth to it, are still there, lightly touching, protecting, guiding, staying close. A living circle surrounding it. No words, no agreement, just natural. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "We are born at a given moment in a given place, and like vintage years of wine, we have the qualities of the year and of the season in which we are born. And perhaps the environment in which a being grows is what shapes it, not only through genetics, but through presence." If you remain with that image, you may feel a very deep sense of safety. Not a safety that comes from the absence of danger, but a safety that comes from someone being there, not leaving you alone. Young elephants do not need to become independent too early. They are touched, guided, held in a space where every mistake is supported. And within that space, they learn, not through pressure, but through kinship. Jung once wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. And perhaps what allows a being to outgrow is not isolation, but connection. If you feel more deeply, you will see that the small actions of the herd carry great meaning. A gentle touch of the trunk, standing a little closer, a subtle shielding movement, all very delicate, not dramatic, but enough to convey a clear message. You are not alone. And perhaps, somewhere deep within you, that message is also being heard. A part of you may have felt alone, may have had to handle everything by yourself, may have believed that you must be strong on your own. But in this moment, as you are in the world of elephants, you can allow yourself to feel something different, that perhaps you do not have to be alone, not in a physical sense, but in a felt sense. You can feel support without needing to know where it comes from. Just allow. Jung once said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." And in the herd of elephants, kinship is not control, not power, but care. A care that does not ask for return, does not set conditions, simply being there. If you remain, you will see that this care is not only for the young, it exists among all members. One elephant may touch another when it feels uneasy. Another may stand closer when there is danger. No words, no explanation, just understanding. An understanding born from living together long enough. If you listen deeply, you may realize that you also have that capacity within you, the ability to feel others, to empathize, to be present without needing to fix. But sometimes you forget, because the outside world often asks you to do more, to solve, to react, to be right. But here, none of that is needed, only presence. And when you allow yourself to be present, without trying, without tension, you may feel a softness spreading, a softness, not weak, but deeply grounded, like the way elephants are both strong and gentle. Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And perhaps, in each gentle touch of elephants, there is a subtle transformation, not obvious, not large, but enough to create connection. If you go deeper, you may feel as if you too are being touched in some way, not physically, but emotionally. A sense of warmth, a sense of being held, a sense that you do not have to carry everything alone. And within that feeling, your body relaxes further. Thoughts slow further. Emotions soften further. Everything begins to merge into a very gentle state, very deep, very quiet, like a young elephant, lying down within the circle of the herd, knowing that it is safe. If you remain with that image just a little longer, you may realize that you too can be like that. No need to stay alert, no need to hold, no need to do anything, just rest. And within that rest, sleep begins to come closer. Not rushed, not forced, simply arriving, like a very soft embrace, surrounding you, holding you, and carrying you into a quieter space where everything is cared for and you can rest. And as you continue to remain in that feeling of being supported, without needing to do anything, without needing to become anyone, simply being within a circle of safety, you may begin to notice something very subtle. That care is not something luxurious. It is a very natural need. Young elephants do not need to deserve protection. They do not need to prove anything, do not need to achieve anything. They are cared for simply because they exist. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "We need more understanding of human nature because the only real danger that exists is man himself." And perhaps an essential part of that understanding is recognizing the need for connection, for care, not only in others, but within yourself. If you remain with this feeling, you may realize that sometimes you have become too used to carrying everything alone, used to being strong, used to being okay, so much so that you forgot the feeling of being supported. But right now, in this quiet space, you can allow something different. No need for big changes, just not resisting the feeling of being held. If you listen more deeply, you will see that care within the elephant herd is not loud, no grand gestures, no dramatic actions, only very small things. A gentle touch, standing close, slowing down to match the young. Very subtle things, but enough. And perhaps you do not need much either. You do not need everything to be perfect. You do not need every problem to be solved. You only need a sense of enough safety to let go. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But perhaps, in this moment, acceptance does not need to be forceful. It does not need confrontation. It can come very gently, through allowing yourself to rest, allowing yourself to do nothing, allowing yourself not to control. And when you do that, very slowly, very gently, you may feel a softness spreading through your body, not from outside, but from within, like a young elephant feeling safe, not because the world is perfect, but because it is within a space that is warm enough, close enough, quiet enough. If you remain in that feeling, you may realize that you no longer need to stay awake, no need to follow, no need to listen to every word. You can drift, lighter, deeper, slower, like being held by someone, and no longer needing to hold anything at all. Jung once said, "The soul always knows what to do to heal itself." And perhaps healing does not always come from doing something. Sometimes it comes from being in a safe space and doing nothing at all. If you go deeper, you may feel that all boundaries begin to soften, no longer clear between body and space, between you and the story, between thought and feeling. Everything merges. And within that merging, you no longer need to hold anything. No questions, no answers, only a very gentle state, very quiet, very deep, like a young elephant, finally lying down within the herd and completely relaxing. And you can be the same. No need to try, no need to achieve, just allow. And when you allow long enough, gently enough, deeply enough, sleep will come. Not as a goal, but as a natural continuation of the feeling of being supported. A very soft drifting, carrying you farther, deeper, into a quiet space where you can rest completely. Memory, a living map. As you continue lying within that gentle sense of support, when the body no longer needs to hold, when the mind no longer needs to try, another deeper layer begins to open. No longer just care, no longer just connection, but memory. If care is the embrace holding the present, then memory is the invisible thread connecting past and present quietly. And in the world of elephants, memory is not something vague. It is a living map. You may imagine a herd of elephants moving across vast lands, dry, changing with seasons, where water is not always present, where life depends on invisible paths. No maps, no clear signs, only memory. Older female elephants guide the herd, not through strength, but through remembering where water lies, even after many years, remembering danger, even when traces have disappeared, remembering paths no one else can see. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The word happiness would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness, and perhaps memory is the same. It does not only store what is pleasant, it holds everything, both beauty and danger." A day in the life of an elephant. And as memories gradually settle, as images lose their sharpness, as you are no longer pulled back into the past, something very natural begins to happen. You return to the present, not the noisy present, full of thoughts, but a very simple present, a present made only of rhythm. If you continue walking with the herd, you may notice that their lives are not complicated. No long-term plans, no rushing, no pressure to become something else, just living. A day in the life of an elephant does not begin with urgency, but with continuation. They wake, not to start again, but simply to continue the flow of life. Eat, move, pause, eat again, walk again. A cycle, very slow, very steady, very stable. They spend most of their time, nearly 18 hours a day, eating, not out of greed, but because that is what the body needs. No overthinking, no hesitation, just doing what is needed. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The least of things with a meaning is worth more in life than the greatest of things without it." And perhaps, in the simplicity of a single day, there is a deep meaning. No need for grand things, only enough. If you remain with that image, you may see elephants moving across vast landscapes, step by step, not rushed, not slow, simply in rhythm. They may walk dozens of kilometers each day, yet without the kind of exhaustion humans often feel. Because they do not resist the journey. They do not think, "When will we arrive?" They do not count the distance. They simply walk. If you listen more deeply, you may sense a clear difference between the way they live and the way you often live. You may be used to thinking ahead, worrying, measuring, calculating, but they remain in each step. Jung once said, "Hurry is not of the devil. Hurry is the devil." And perhaps rushing does not only tire you, it pulls you away from yourself. If you allow, you might gently slow down, even in your thoughts. No need to go anywhere, no need to achieve anything. Just be in this moment. If you continue observing, you may notice that elephants do not sleep the way you are used to. They sleep very little, and often standing. No need to shut down completely. No need to fall into deep sleep immediately. They rest in a way that suits their bodies, natural, unforced, without expectation. And perhaps your sleep is the same. It is not something you can force, not something you achieve through effort. It is a state you allow. Jung once wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct." And perhaps sleep does not come from thinking correctly, but from letting go. If you stay a little longer, you may feel the rhythm of elephants beginning to influence you. Breath slower, body heavier, thoughts fewer. You no longer need to follow every word, no longer need to understand every idea. Just be there, like an elephant standing still, resting in the middle of a journey, not completely stopping, but enough to restore. If you go deeper, you may notice a very natural balance in the way they live. Not too much, not too little, nothing lacking, nothing excessive, just right. And within that rightness, there is no tension, no pressure, only flow. If you allow yourself to merge with that flow, you may feel a lightness spreading, not the loss of energy, but the absence of unnecessary effort. You do not need to keep yourself awake, no need to control, no need to. You can let it come, like an elephant after a long day, not trying to sleep, but simply stopping. And when it stops, the body knows what to do. If you remain in that state just a little longer, you may feel that you too are stopping. Not stopping thoughts completely, but stopping the act of holding on to them. Not stopping emotions, but stopping the reaction. Everything begins to slow, very gently, very deeply, very naturally. And in that slowing, sleep is no longer a goal. It becomes a result, a very soft result, very gentle, arriving when you no longer try. And you can continue drifting with the slow rhythm of the herd, step by step, moving away from wakefulness into a space that is quieter, darker, softer, where nothing more needs to be done, only rest. And when you are quiet enough, slow enough, light enough, sleep will come as a natural part of the journey, embracing you and carrying you deeper into gentle stillness. And as you remain in that slow rhythm, you may begin to notice something very subtle. That fatigue is not always from doing too much. Sometimes it comes from never stopping. Elephants, though they travel many kilometers each day, do not carry the tension humans often feel, because they do not live in resistance. They do not force their bodies to go faster, do not force their minds to think more. They simply walk when it is time to walk, eat when it is time to eat, and stop when the body needs rest. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." And perhaps your fatigue does not disappear when you push through it. It softens when you allow it to be there. If you feel more deeply, you may notice that a day in the life of elephants is not divided into tasks, no to-do list, no deadlines, only a continuous flow, one action following another, without pressure interrupting it. And when there is no pressure, everything becomes lighter. Even repetition does not become a burden. If you stay a little longer, you may try to feel your own rhythm, not the rhythm of thought, but the rhythm of the body. Breath in, breath out. Very slow, very steady. No need to adjust, just notice. And as you notice, you may realize that your body has its own intelligence. An intelligence that knows when to rest, knows when to let go. But sometimes you do not listen because you are used to continuing. Jung once wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. And perhaps your sleep does not need to be like anyone else's. No formula, no standard. It only needs to fit you. If you remain in this state, you may notice that you no longer need to try to sleep. No need to reach a state. You only need not to resist sleepiness. Not to hold yourself awake. Not to pull yourself back. Just allow. Like an elephant. Not trying to rest, but simply stopping and letting the body adjust. If you go deeper, you may see that this letting go is not losing control. It is a form of trust. Trust that your body knows. Trust that your mind will settle. Trust that you do not have to do everything. And within that trust, there is a great softness, a softness dissolving the final layers of tension. If you stay a little longer, everything slows even more. Thoughts thinning, sensations softening, space widening, and you are no longer on the surface. You begin to sink, very gently, very slowly, like a leaf falling, not rushing, not resisting, simply falling. And in that falling, there is no fear, only acceptance. If you allow yourself to go deeper, you may realize that you no longer need to hold on to anything. No story, no image, no meaning, only a very simple state, very quiet, very deep. And in that state, sleep is no longer something you seek. It is something already there, waiting for you to let go enough, to slow enough, to become still enough, to enter. And as you come very close, very deep, very light, you can let everything continue drifting. No need to hold, no need to return, only go further, into a soft darkness, quieter, gentler, where you, finally, can rest completely. Elephants and the ecosystem. And as the rhythm of the day settles, as movement no longer carries urgency, as you have felt how elephants simply live, something deeper begins to reveal itself, that their existence is not only for themselves. Every step, every action, every presence quietly creates a much larger impact. If you continue walking with the herd, you may notice that the places they pass through are no longer the same. Paths begin to form, bushes open, dry ground reveals water when they dig, seeds are carried far and grow in new places. No intention, no plan, no goal of shaping the ecosystem, just living. And yet, that living becomes the foundation for other life. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Individuation does not shut one out from the world, but gathers the world to oneself." And perhaps, when a being lives true to its nature, it does not separate from the world. It becomes part of the whole. Complex communication. As you continue drifting in that vast sense of connection, as the boundary between you and the world becomes softer, as you no longer feel like a separate entity, another layer of awareness begins to open. No longer existence, no longer influence, but communication. If everything in the world of elephants is interconnected, then the way they speak to one another is not like what you are used to. Not only sound, not only clear signals, but a network of sensation. If you slow down and listen more deeply, you may realize that elephants do not need to speak loudly to be understood. They produce very low sounds, almost impossible for you to hear. Vibrations, traveling through the air, through the ground, reaching tens of kilometers away. A call can travel farther than you imagine. A signal can be felt without needing to be heard. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The most intense conflicts, if overcome, leave behind a sense of security and calm that is not easily disturbed, and perhaps, in deep communication, without many words, a very stable connection can still be formed." If you remain with that awareness, you may see that elephants do not only hear with their ears, they feel, through their feet, through their bodies, through the subtle vibrations of the earth. A world where information does not only move through sound, but through sensation. If you go deeper, you may see that their communication does not stop at sound. A movement of the ear, a motion of the trunk, a glance, everything carries meaning. No language, no structure, only presence. Jung once said, "Words are of course the most powerful drug used by mankind. But perhaps, before words, there was already understanding. An understanding that does not require expression. If you listen more deeply, you may realize that you also have this ability. You can feel someone without them speaking. You can sense a space without analyzing. You can understand without explaining. But sometimes you forget because you are used to using words. If you allow yourself to return to that sensitivity, you may find that everything becomes lighter. You do not need to say the right thing, do not need to understand everything, only feel. And when you feel, very gently, very slowly, you may realize that the space around you is also speaking, not with words, but with silence. A silence, not empty, but full. If you remain in that silence, you may feel that you no longer need to create noise in your mind. No need to think constantly. No need to interpret. Only listen. And as you listen, you may notice very subtle signals appearing. The rhythm of your heart, your breath, the sensations of your body. All of these are forms of communication, a dialogue between you and yourself. Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And perhaps, when you listen within, you no longer need to search outside. You only need to be there. If you continue going deeper, you may feel everything beginning to slow, sound fading, thoughts softening, sensations dissolving. Only a very subtle vibration remains, very deep, very still, like the way elephants feel the world, not through noise, but through delicate vibrations. If you allow yourself to merge with that vibration, you will no longer need to understand everything, no need to follow, no need to hold. You can drift, like a gentle wave, spreading, then dissolving into space. And in that dissolving, you are no longer separate, no longer needing communication, no longer needing connection, because you are already a part of it. If you remain a little longer, you may feel that you are no longer on the surface. You go deeper, deeper, into a space that is very still, very soft, very dim, where all sound has become silence, all movement has become stillness, and you do not need to do anything. No need to speak, no need to think, no need to understand. Only be there and let yourself drift deeper into sleep, which is coming very close, very gently, like a final vibration, dissolving into complete stillness. And as you remain in that quiet, no longer needing to understand, no longer needing to respond, you may begin to notice something very subtle, that communication does not always require words. Elephants, though they have dozens of different sounds, do not rely entirely on them. They can speak without making a sound. They can understand without explanation. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And perhaps that meeting does not need words. It can happen in silence. If you listen more deeply, you may feel that even without sound, there is still so much information being exchanged. The feeling of space, the warmth of the body, the subtle rhythm of breath, all of these are signals, small vibrations, but not meaningless. If you go deeper, you may realize that you are also communicating with yourself in this way. No words, no clear thoughts, just feeling. A slight tension in the shoulders, a softening in the body, a slightly deeper breath. Everything is speaking to you, but only when you slow down can you hear it. Jung once wrote, There is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen, and perhaps, right now, you are beginning to hear that voice. Not clear, not loud, but very real. If you remain a little longer, you may find that you no longer need to understand everything. No need to name sensations. No need to analyze. Only go be there. And as you are there, everything becomes simpler. Fewer layers, fewer thoughts. Only experience. A very gentle experience. Very slow, very deep. If you continue drifting, you may feel that you no longer need to communicate. No need to speak to the world. No need to explain. No need to respond. You can simply exist, like an elephant standing still, making no sound, yet fully present. And in that presence, there is no pressure, no demand, only being. If you go deeper, you may realize that this presence is enough. You do not need anything more, nothing less. Only remain in it. And when you remain long enough, deep enough, everything begins to dissolve. Sound disappears. Sensation fades. Thoughts drift away. Only a vast stillness remains. Very soft, very gentle. If you allow yourself to go deeper, you may feel yourself almost merging with that stillness. No boundaries, no movement, no you in the usual sense. Only a very light state, very deep, very quiet. And in that state, there is no need for communication, no need to understand, no need to connect, because you are already in complete connection. If you let go just a little more, you may feel that sleep is very near, not sudden, not clear, but like a gentle wave, slowly covering everything, a soft drifting, carrying you farther, deeper, into a dim, quiet space. And you do not need to do anything, no need to hold, no need to follow, only let yourself drift, slower, deeper, quieter, until everything fully dissolves and you enter sleep very naturally, very gently, and very deeply. Learning and culture, and as sounds fade into stillness, as wordless communication becomes familiar, as you no longer need to understand in the usual way, something very subtle begins to appear. Not information, not signals, but learning. If you continue staying in the world of elephants, you may realize that they do not live only by instinct. They observe, they register, they learn, not through books, not through instruction, but through presence. An elephant calf is not taught with words how to find water. It walks with the herd, observes, remembers, and gradually knows. A behavior repeated across generations is no longer pure instinct. It becomes culture. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "Man is not merely a product of his personal history, but also of the collective history of mankind." And perhaps elephants are the same. They are not only individuals, they carry memory of the entire herd, surviving in a changing world. As the flow of learning gradually settles, as you begin to sense that wisdom does not only reside in thought, but also in experience, another deeper layer of the story begins to unfold. Because learning, in the end, is not only for knowing, it is for adapting. If you continue walking with the herd of elephants, you may realize that their world is not always as peaceful as their slow exterior suggests. Forests change, water sources change, and most of all, humans appear. A species faster, louder, and more unpredictable than anything nature has created. The elephants, once traveling along familiar paths, now must change their routes. They begin to move more at night, Avoid places where humans are. Change the way they find water. Change how they move through the forest. Even change the structure of the herd itself. Not because they want to, but because they must adapt. Carl Gustav Jung once wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. And perhaps adaptation is how life outgrows its challenges, not by controlling everything, but by changing itself." If you remain with that image, you may see that the change in elephants is not a violent resistance. It is very slow, very quiet, but very real. In some populations, more and more elephants are born without tusks. Not because that was the species' original trait, but because over many years of hunting, those with tusks were more likely to be killed, and nature begins to select. An evolution happening right before human eyes. A clear example of life's ability to adapt. If you listen more deeply, you may realize that this adaptation does not exist only in elephants. It exists within you. In your life, there are also changes you did not choose, circumstances you cannot control, paths you must adjust, and often you may feel that you are losing something, but sometimes you are simply changing. Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And perhaps, even when circumstances are powerful, there is still a part within you that can adapt, not by resisting, but by transforming. If you go deeper, you may realize that adaptation is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of intelligence. Rigid beings often disappear. Flexible beings continue, not because they are stronger, but because they know how to change. If you remain a little longer, you may gently sense how you yourself have changed over time. Perhaps you are no longer as before, no longer thinking the same, no longer reacting the same. And that is not loss. It is growth. Jung once wrote, "Life really does begin at 40. Up until then, you are just doing research. And perhaps each experience, each change, each adaptation is part of that process. A process that never fully ends." If you continue drifting with this thought, you may feel that you no longer need to resist change. No need to keep everything the same, because everything is always changing. Like the forest, like the seasons, like the elephants, always adjusting their path. If you allow yourself to soften just a little, you may feel that change is no longer frightening. It is simply movement, a vast current in which all living beings exist, and you are part of that current. If you remain a little longer, you may feel your body becoming softer, thoughts slowing, emotions lightening, everything as if adapting to another state, a state more quiet. Just as elephants adapt to a changing world, you are also adapting to the gentle darkness of sleep. No need to force, no need to try, only allow. And as you allow, everything begins to slow. Breath deeper, body heavier, space quieter, and you gradually drift away from the surface of thought into a place that is very still, very soft, very dim, where all change, all adaptation, all stories dissolve. Only rest remains, a rest very deep, very light, very natural, and you do not need to do anything, only continue drifting deeper, quieter, until sleep gently embraces you. As you continue resting in that acceptance of change, no longer resisting, no longer trying to hold things as they were, you may begin to notice something very subtle. That adaptation is not losing yourself. It is a way of preserving life. Elephants, when they change their behavior, do not become another species. They remain themselves, only more flexible. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning, and perhaps each stage, each circumstance, requires a different way of living. Not because you were wrong before, but because you are entering another part of the journey." If you listen more deeply, you may feel that within you there is also a natural ability to change. You can slow down when needed. You can let go when it is enough. You can rest when your body asks. But sometimes you forget, because you are used to maintaining one rhythm, one way of living. If you allow yourself to soften a little, you may see that change does not need to be big, not sudden. It can be very small, very gentle. Like the way a herd of elephants gradually shifts to moving at night, little by little, until it becomes natural. If you go deeper, you may realize that this adaptation is happening right now. Your body is slowing, your breath deepening, your thoughts thinning. You do not need to do it. It is already happening. Jung once wrote, "The psyche is a self-regulating system, and perhaps, when you do not interfere too much, your inner system knows how to bring you back to balance, to rest." If you remain a little longer, you may feel that you no longer need to stay awake, no need to follow, no need to hold on to the story. You can let go a little more, very gently, and as you let go, you may feel a soft drifting, not fast, not strong, just downward, like a leaf falling, not resisting, not controlling, simply falling. If you continue drifting, you may realize that you no longer need to understand change, no need to explain, no need to control, because you are already within it. You are changing, little by little, from wakefulness to rest, from thought to stillness, from awareness to sleep. If you go deeper, you may feel all boundaries softening. No clear line between inside and outside, between body and space, between you and the gentle darkness. Everything blending. Only a very light state remains, very deep, very quiet. If you allow yourself to let go just a little more, you may feel that there is nothing left to do. No need to adapt, no need to change, no need to understand, because you are already in the right place, a place that is very still, very soft, very safe. And in that space, sleep is no longer something you wait for. It is something that is already holding you, gently, slowly, without force, without hurry, and you only need to continue drifting, deeper, quieter, until all movement dissolves completely, and you enter sleep, very naturally, very softly, and very deeply. Emotional intelligence and the perception of time. You move through adaptation. As you begin to sense that life is not rigid but softly changing with circumstance, another deeper layer begins to reveal itself. Not only adapting to the present, but feeling time. Elephants do not live in isolated moments, as we often assume. They do not only react to the present, but seem to carry a subtle sense of the past and a quiet intuition of the future. If you observe slowly, you may see that they do not move randomly. They return to old water sources at the right season. They avoid places that were once dangerous, even after many years. They seem to know when to leave and when to stay, not through maps, not through reasoning, but through a deep, quiet awareness. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "Time is a relative concept, and the psyche creates its own time." And perhaps, in the world of elephants, time is not numbers, but a flow felt through memory, intuition, and deep connection with nature. If you listen carefully, you may realize that you also have this ability. You can feel time, not only measure it. You know when a day passes quickly, when a moment stretches long. You feel the change of seasons, not only through calendars, but through light, air, and a subtle yet real sensation. If you remain with that feeling, you may notice that time within you is not the same as time outside. Outside, everything moves fast, but inside, it can slow, very much, if you allow. Jung once wrote, "The present is the only time in which any duty can be done, or any grace received." And perhaps, when you are truly in the present, time is no longer pressure. It becomes a space where you can rest, the connection with humans. As the sense of time gradually dissolves, as you no longer cling to the past or the future, but simply drift gently within a very still space, something else begins to emerge. A thread, very thin, very deep, connecting you with the world around you. Because, even in the deepest stillness, you are never truly separate. Elephants are the same. They do not exist only in the deep forest, but also in human memory, in stories, in symbols, in very ancient dreams. For thousands of years, the image of elephants has appeared in the cultures and religions of many civilizations. In India, the image of the god Ganesha, the elephant-headed deity, represents wisdom, beginnings, and protection. In Africa, elephants symbolize strength, but not the strength of destruction, rather the strength of calmness, of memory, of guidance. These images are not merely imagination. They reflect something very real, very deep, that humans have felt from this creature. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The collective unconscious consists of the sum of ancestral memories and archetypes common to all humankind, and perhaps the image of elephants is also a part of that collective unconscious, a symbol of steadiness, of ancient wisdom, of a slow rhythm of life that humans have gradually lost." If you listen more deeply, you may realize that this connection exists not only in symbols, but also in very real experiences. There are those who care for elephants, who say they can feel their emotions, not through words, but through the eyes, through the way they touch one another, through moments that are very quiet, yet very full. Elephants can recognize humans who once treated them kindly. Even after many years, they remember, not only with memory, but with emotion. Jung once wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." And perhaps, in the connection between humans and elephants, there is no true domination, only connection. If you remain with that feeling, you may realize that within you, there is also this capacity to connect. You can feel others without words. You can understand without explanation. You can remember, not only with the mind, but with feeling. If you go deeper, you may see that elephants not only inspire culture, but also science. Their bodies, especially their ability to resist cancer, have drawn great attention from scientists. A large animal, living long, yet with a very low rate of cancer, as if nature has found a balance that humans are still learning. And perhaps this reminds us that wisdom does not belong only to humans. It exists everywhere, in nature, in other beings, in systems we do not yet fully understand. Jung once said, "Nature is not only all that is visible to the eye, It also includes the inner pictures of the soul. And perhaps, when you look at a being like an elephant, you do not only see a body, you see a part of yourself. If you remain a little longer, you may feel that the boundary between you and the world begins to soften. You are no longer a separate individual. You are part of a larger network, a network of life, where everything is connected. If you continue drifting, you may feel that you no longer need to understand all those connections. No need to explain, no need to analyze, only feel. A very light feeling, very gentle, that you are not alone, that you always belong to something greater. If you go deeper, you may feel that this connection requires no effort. It has always been there. It is only whether you notice it or not. And in this moment, as everything has slowed, as thoughts have quieted, you may feel it more clearly than ever. A presence, very soft, very warm, very safe. If you allow yourself to remain in that feeling, you may find that you no longer need to hold on to awareness, no need to follow, no need to understand, no need to grasp, because you are already held by space, by stillness, by this invisible connection itself. If you continue drifting, very gently, very slowly, you may feel yourself moving further away from thoughts, further away from concepts. Only a sense of being held remains, a sense of belonging. And in that feeling, sleep comes, not as something you must find, but as a place you return to, very light, very deep, very quiet. And you only need to continue drifting until everything dissolves completely and you rest fully. As you remain within that very gentle sense of connection, you may begin to notice something even deeper. That connection is not something you must create. It is something that has always existed. Only sometimes you forget how to feel it. Elephants do not try to connect. They do not need to learn how to love or empathize. They simply live within that connection. A gentle touch of the trunk, a synchronized step, a silence full of understanding. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." And perhaps every encounter, whether between humans or between a human and another being, leaves a trace. A very small change, but very real. If you listen more deeply, you may realize that you too have known such moments. A glance, a presence, a feeling that you are understood without words. Those moments are not loud. They do not last long, but they remain for a very long time. Just like elephants, remember those who once treated them kindly, not through logic, but through a deep emotional memory. If you go deeper, you may realize that these connections make the world softer, less lonely, less divided. And when you allow yourself to feel that, you may see that you do not need to hold on so tightly, no need to prove, no need to control. You can relax a little more. If you continue drifting, you may feel your body responding to that sense of safety. Shoulders dropping, breath slowing, heartbeat steadying, everything as if saying, "You can rest now." Jung once wrote, "We are not what happened to us, we are what we wish to become." And perhaps, in this moment, you do not need to become anything. You do not need to move forward. You do not need to change. Only be here, in the quiet, in the feeling of being held, an ancient peace. As you pass through all these layers of connection, as you begin to feel that you are no longer separate from the world, no longer caught in time, no longer needing to understand, or control, something very gentle begins to appear. Not a thought, not a clear image, but a feeling, a peace, very deep, very ancient, as if it has always been there, waiting for you to touch it. If you allow yourself to slow down just a little more, you may imagine a very still scene, a vast night. The sky is dark, but not heavy, only deep, very deep. Beneath that sky, a herd of elephants rests. No large movement, no loud sound, only breathing, slow, steady, and very quiet. Carl Gustav Jung once said, "In each of us, there is another whom we do not know, and perhaps, in this stillness, you begin to touch that part within yourself, a part that is not noisy, not hurried, not pulled by the outer world, a part very ancient. If you listen closely, you may feel that the breathing of the elephants spreads into the space, slowly, steadily, and then, very gently, your breath begins to follow. You do not need to try. It simply happens, and as you continue drifting, very softly, very slowly, you enter sleep, deep, soft, and complete. Sleep well,